10 Spider-Man villains that might be too weird for the MCU. Spider-Man Far From Home presented one of Spider-Man's strangest villains with Mysterio, reimagined in a new manner, as well as 3 of Marvel's most bizarre villains in the Elementals. While these villains looked amazing on the big screen, they could have quickly gone off the rails in the wrong hands. However, even Marvel might have some problems when it comes to bringing some of Spider-Man's villains to the big screen. Many of the villains in Spider-Man's world are perfect for movies or TV, with most as guys who just wear costumes. Even difficult ones in the past, such as Sandman, worked well on the big screen. However, as Lizard showed, not all Spidey villains will work in a movie. Here are 10 Spider-Man villains that might be too weird for the MCU. 1. Jackal. If there is one storyline that angers most Spider-Man fans, it is the Clone Saga. That was a time where Spider-Man turned out to be a clone, and the real Peter Parker was actually gone for some time. Although no one knew it until after the fact. The man responsible was Miles Warren, also known as the Jackal. Warren was in love with a student of his in Gwen Stacy, and after her death, he blamed Spider-Man. He then created clones of Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy and set the entire confusing storyline in motion. Forget the fact that he looks like a goblin. The Jackal created one of the strangest and anger-inducing storylines in Spider-Man history, and there is no way the movies introduce it into their timeline. 2. Kangaroo. The Kangaroo is a Spider-Man villain named Frank Oliver. He spent his early life studying kangaroos and living as they lived. Spider-Man beat him quickly, and he ended up homeless before Jonas Harrow used him as a minion. After he died, a new kangaroo named Brian Hibbs replaced him. His entire backstory is that he was an interior decorator who dreamed of one day becoming a successful supervillain like the original Kangaroo. Much like his hero, in his first fight with Spider-Man, the web crawler beat him easily. The two men shared the same powers, jumping a long way. 3. Plantman. Plantman is an early Marvel villain, making his debut way back in 1963 in the pages of Strange Tales Pound 113. His real name is Samuel Smithers, and he was from London, learning from a well-known botanist. When lightning struck his plant ray gun, he gained the power to animated plant life. So, he is basically like Poison Ivy, but he is more like a leafy-looking floronic man. When he became Blackheath, his body was basically vegetable matter, and he could alter his shape, had superhuman strength, and could mentally communicate with plants and vegetable matter. 4. Grizzly. Much like the Kangaroo, who worshipped kangaroos and decided to try to jump like them to become a supervillain, Maxwell Markham decided he wanted to become like an animal as well. Markham was a professional wrestler who had his license revoked when J. Jonah Jameson demanded in an editorial that the Wrestling Commission investigate his violent tactics. So, he dressed up like a giant grizzly bear, had the suit he wore augment his strength thanks to the Jackal, and went after Jameson. Spider-Man then beat him, and then beat him again, and Grizzly became a C-list villain, who later became a minor league hero. 5. Carrion. Miles Warren was a very destructive villain when it came to the life of Spider-Man thanks to the creation of the clones that ran amok in Marvel Comics. One of those clones was of Warren himself, and that clone was known as Carrion. This was in the sequel to the Clone Saga, and Carrion never made any sense. There have been 3 different incarnations of Carrion in Spider-Man comics, with writers having to explain why he changed based on changes made over time to the Clone Saga. Over time, Carrion became Malcolm McBride, and later William Allen, before becoming a sentient virus and going completely off the rails. 6. The Spider Slayers. At one time, it seemed like J. Jonah Jameson wanted nothing more than to not only publicly humiliate Spider-Man, but to eventually destroy him. To this point, Jameson commissioned the creation of Spider Slayers to capture Spider-Man, which made JJJ a much more significant threat and villain than he really deserved to be. Spencer Smythe is the inventor of the Spider Slayers, and the original Spider Slayer was comic in its look, a giant robotic attack machine with a computer monitor on its face that showed J. Jonah Jameson, or whoever was currently controlling the robot. Later, Smith's son created a whole army of Spider Slayers to track down and destroy Spider-Man. 7. Typeface. Some villains are too ridiculous, even for comic books. One of those is the villain known as Typeface. What is crazy is that Typeface is not one of those crazy villains from the 60s and 70s, but is one actually introduced in 2000 in the pages of Peter Parker, Spider-Man Vol. 2 pound 23. Typeface has no powers, although he does have military training. Gordon Thomas was a Vietnam vet who lost his brother there and returned home also to lose his wife and son. He painted letters on his face and used giant letters to attack people. 8. Morlun. When Spider-Man Far From Home introduced the idea of the multiverse, it opened up a ton of possibilities, none of which will likely come true thanks to that movie's revelations. However, there is always the chance it could happen in the world of Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse. With that said, Morlun is just a little too strange for even that. Morlun is an enemy of all Spider-Mans from the various multiverses. He is from Earth-001 and hunts down all spider totems. The entire idea of totems was an addition to Spider-Man's mythology that changed everything about who he was and why he became a hero, and is just a little too wild and strange ever to make its way into a movie. 9. Swarm. While Marvel could create Swarm on the big screen and make it look decent, don't expect this strange Spider-Man villain ever to make his way into a movie. Swarm is Fritz von Meyer, a former Nazi scientist who studied killer bees later in life. It was when he found a strange hive of bees that showed no fear and were both passive and intelligent that his life changed. When he tried to use radiation to return the aggression to the bees so he could control them, they attacked him. As he died, his consciousness combined with the bees, and he became a giant bee man known as Swarm. 10. The living brain. In the 60s, computers were still new, and that made them frightening to many people, who saw them one day taking over the world. Amazing Spider-Man Pound 8 took that fear and created the living brain, a creation by a man named Dr. Petty, that was meant to help people, but ended up running amok. The machine was brought to Peter Parker's high school, but when two guys tried to steal it, the machine was bumped, malfunctioned, and went on a rampage until Spider-Man destroyed its control panel. Years later, Dr. Petty's son returned and tried to use it for revenge, but Spider-Man stopped it again. Thanks for watching this video. Please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel for more great videos.
Row 18, plot 20.